across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum right here on Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I'll be your host for the next 3 hours of news, views and dynamic debate. You know the drill. Get involved. Get it off your chest. Get on the phone and call me on 0344 499 1000 or WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I'll give you my word, I'll play your message out. It's Wednesday, February the 19th. Here's what's coming up. The strange case of Islamic hate preacher Muhammad Hoblos, whose rabble-rousing tour of Britain was due to start in London tonight, but who I can now reveal looks to have been banned from entering the country. It's taken us here at Talk a long and frustrating week to extract from the Home Office confirmation that the UK will follow 29 other European countries by blocking him. Why don't Keir Starmer and his gormless government want us to know? This ranting guy Hoblos loves Hamas, tells his followers that Allah prefers paedophile rapists who pray to blameless, decent people who don't pray, and also says that Muslim men who form relationships with non-Muslim women should have nails hammered into the back of their heads. Surely Labour should make a virtue of keeping this dangerous lunatic out of the UK. Why isn't it? Could it be that two-tier Keir's crew are worried about offending the Muslim vote on which they're going to rely at the next election? What do you reckon? 0344 499 1000. In other news, the scandal of Starmer's cabinet full of liars. Rachel from accounts shamelessly lying about her not-so-glittering career. The former Transport Secretary Louise Haig keeping mum about her shady past as a convicted fraudster. And now Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds pretending that before apparently improving his work-life balance by becoming an MP, he was a solicitor. In fact, he was nothing of the sort, but nevertheless persuaded his constituents to vote for him, partly due to his prestigious background as a qualified lawyer in a legal practice, which he wasn't. How many more of these losers ruining the country have been economical with the truth? 0344 499 1000. Also tonight, the disgraceful judge with a god complex who thinks that she and all the other bewigged mediocrities should be above criticism and reckons taxpayers should pay for her security. No, lady, if you really think you need protection, bloody well pay for it yourself. And as for you being above criticism, good luck with that. Stay tuned. In about 20 minutes, you'll find out whether or not you're above criticism. And the answer is you're not. 0344 499 1000. Plus, the new tactic migrants are using to game Britain's pathetic asylum system, sending their kids across the channel alone and then claiming their human right to a family life and coming across to join them. How about this? You enjoy a family life in your own country and maybe stop risking your children's lives. How about that? 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, Britain's looming crisis, the welfare catastrophe, as it is revealed that more than 3 million people are getting full universal credit benefits with no requirement to look for work. Also, nearly 10 million people between the age of 16 and 65, in other words, the working age population, are economically inactive. This is massive, folks. This is massive. Liz Kendall, the Work and Pensions Secretary, has got a mountain to climb, and frankly, she's not capable of doing it. 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, more madness from crazy Ed Miliband as he slams the door on cheap energy for all of us for an entire decade after the discovery of a giant shale gas field under Lincolnshire. No fracking ever. insists the deranged net zero secretary. Instead, our bills are soaring and now will continue to soar. Remember Ed's promise to save us all 300 quid thanks to his green dream? Was he lying too? 03444991000. Also, the latest on those Ukraine peace talks and the increasing tension after Zelensky was not invited to the party. Why Starmer's bid to enfranchise 16-year-olds will backfire because at least a third of them are keen Nigel Farage fans. And finally, why underperforming Tory leader Kemi Badenoch is fighting for her future as more and more Conservative MPs voice their dismay over her dire performances on the media and the Prime Minister's question sessions. She just keeps losing to Starmer. No mean feat, because he's utterly hopeless at the dispatch box. How has she managed to be worse? Is Kemi up to the job? 03444991000. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now, on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Wednesday night together. And let's kick the ball off rolling. Is that an expression? Let's go straight over to Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Welcome, Isabel.
Hi. So we're not talking international stuff right away, are we? We're talking.
We're going to talk about Hoblos.
Actually, this is an international story because when it comes to our neighbours in Europe, they decided they didn't want Hoblos, and they've been very clear about that for a very long time. Unfortunately, it took our Home Office very much longer to work out what their position was on Muhammad Hoblos, a very unappealing individual, not someone we want ranting and preaching within the UK. As you just announced at the top of the show there, it does now appear that the Home Office has banned this unedifying individual from our shores, but doesn't really want to tell us why or own up to the fact that they've done it. And I find this really bewildering.
They should be proud of it. They should be proud of it. This guy says that Allah prefers paedophile rapists, people who rape babies every day but pray, to blameless, decent people who don't pray. He tells his followers they must never condemn Hamas, they must love Hamas, and also says that any Muslim man who has a relationship with a non-Muslim woman should have nails hammered into the back of his head. This guy is a spreader of hate. The government should be proud of this. But no, you and I, for the past week, have been trying to get any sense out of the Home Office. At first they said, yeah, we're on the case, we'll tell you. We know about him, we'll send you an email letting you know about our decision. And then suddenly, at the beginning of this week, we didn't hear from them, obviously. We put that down to standard issue government inefficiency, but it was all part of a plan. Come Monday, they're saying, oh, we never comment on individual cases. Well, you did last week. So they changed the goalpost, and now off the record they've sort of told us, well, we don't encourage this kind of guy, but they don't want people to know. So this guy Hoblos was due to appear in East London tonight. The show that he's in has got 4 or 5 other preachers as well. Mustn't call them hate preachers because I'm not sure. And that venue has been changed to another place in East London, but Hoblos is not on the lineup. So he clearly has not been allowed into the country, but Keir Starmer and his government don't want us to know. Now, let's speculate. I say it's because he's terrified of offending the Muslim vote. Most Muslims, decent people, would not approve of this ranting lunatic Hoblos. But there's a certain element, the noisy extremists, who want Sharia law and the like, who would approve of it. And he doesn't want to offend them. He doesn't want to offend the Muslim vote because he needs it at the next election. And that is about as low as politics gets.
I think there's been some extraordinary cowardice at the heart of the handling of this challenge. It wasn't a complicated thing to make a decision on this. Why would we want to be outliers in terms of the judgments that the whole of the rest of the Schengen zone, that's 29 countries, have come to the conclusion, and it's not really as if they are particularly intolerant, is it? They've come to the conclusion that this individual is a bad and malign influence. Why would we want to take a different track on that? Yes, we're in favour of freedom of speech, but within certain boundaries. And there are some people who say things that just go way, way too far. And he is clearly one of those. Now, I personally spent a good deal of time on the phone to the Home Office yesterday about this case. And I've been a journalist for a very, very long time. I've been calling the Home Office on this and that, probably, frankly, for the best part of 20 years. And they tried to tell me that they had a long-standing policy of not commenting on individual cases. Now, that is true, but this isn't an individual case. This isn't a private person who no one's ever heard of. This is a notorious, radical Islamic extremist. It's not a private case, this. It's not an individual case. It's somebody who is coming on a paid-for speaking tour. He's not coming on a private visit to perhaps give succor to a dying parent or something like that. He's coming on a public thing. So that little excuse there, we don't comment on individual cases, simply doesn't fly. And I told that to them very, very plainly. Yeah. But they were still trying to talk in riddles and, you know, giving nods and winks and so on. I just said to them, look, how about you just straight up about this and say, we've made a decision. We don't want people like this in our country. Yeah. Would they do that? No, they wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, this time last week, you know, I too have personally, it's not often I dust down my notebook, but I have in the last week. I personally have spoken to the Home Office a couple of times, and so have my team, and we've been on the phone to them constantly. So this time last week, they were commenting on an individual, because they said to me, oh, yes, I know exactly. You mean Muhammad Hoblos? Yes, yes, yes. I've had an inquiry from the Telegraph and the Mail. You're on the list. So they were commenting on this guy last week. Now, what's happened clearly, due to our requests for some, clarity on this issue, they've obviously gone to the top, gone to Yvette Cooper and Starmer, and word has come down, no, 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 we don't want to do this noisily. We don't want anyone to know we're banning him, which is pretty damn odd. But I think we've hit the nail on the head. We know why this government is doing it, because it doesn't want to offend the Muslim vote. And I must stress, as I did just now, vast majority of Muslims would disapprove of this ranting lunatic just as much as you or I or anyone of the audience would. But there is a small extreme element who will make a noise if he is banned, and I think Starmer's scared of that.
I mean, the extreme comments that this individual makes are in no way representative of mainstream Muslim views and thinking. And to that extent, they actually make life harder for good, ordinary, respectful followers of that religion. It's not helpful to have these crazy individuals from any religion. Actually, there aren't that many that I'm aware of, incredibly radical Christians that talk this kind of language in our country. But if there were, it wouldn't be helpful to Christianity either. So this is in no way about being anti-Muslim, quite the reverse. But yet the Home Office is running scared. We've got ministers running scared of their own shadows here. It is no way to run a government. It is no way to treat our national interest. I can put it as boldly as that.
And by the way, this is an issue of transparency in a democracy that has freedom of speech and freedom of expression. These are perfectly reasonable inquiries on the part of the media, as in us, that frankly the Home Office should be straight with us about. The government should be straight with us. We're not asking for personal, private details, anything that will compromise anyone. We want to know whether whether or not the government is going to ban from this country a dangerous hate preacher. And we can't get an answer. I mean, we've sort of got an answer, but it's pretty damn bizarre that they won't say that this guy who should be banned has been banned, even though he has been banned, if you see what I mean. Listen,
and did you really think we weren't going to find that out? I mean, come on, guys.
You know, typical socialists, they think they can control the media. They never can. Listen, we're going to break now. We're going to squeeze quite a lot in. When we come back, we're going to talk about this judge with the God complex who thinks that she and all her fellow bewigged mediocrities should be above criticism. That next.
He used his mum's ID. He was ordering them in a period of 6 months, so he was actually harbouring loads of weapons into his home. He went to his local post office, didn't get ID, didn't get any checks, collected the weapon, went on later that day and took my brother's life. We are trying to do everything we possibly can to make it harder, to put in more barriers for the future, and to not allow weapons that are clearly just being designed to seriously harm and murder people to be allowed to be sold freely.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Actually, before, Isabel, we get to that pompous judge who thinks she and all of her mediocre colleagues on the bench should be above criticism, that we're not even allowed to question any of their often completely useless, moronic decisions. Let's talk about the liars in the cabinet. Now, of course, we know Rachel. Yeah.
That's all of them.
I've got a spare 5 hours, so let's talk about that. No, seriously, we know about Rachel from accounts. She lied about her career, you know, pretended she was an economist when she wasn't, pretended she worked as an economist for 10 years at the Bank of England when she did nothing of the sort. All sorts of lies on her CV. And, of course, then there was Louise Haigh, the Transport Secretary, who kept rather quiet about her nefarious background as a convicted fraudster. We didn't know about that until she got found out. And now the business secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, who told his constituents, told the House of Commons and put in the LinkedIn business system on his profile that he was a solicitor working for a law firm in central Manchester. He was nothing of the sort. He was for a while a trainee solicitor, but he never became a solicitor. So he's lied. He's burnished his CV. And, you know, for a lot of people tend to exaggerate their qualifications to get a job. But if you're doing it in order to get yourself elected and by extension promoted to one of the great offices of state, you know, the fact that you've lied about your past is really important. So he's just a two-bit little liar.
Yeah, as you say, a lot of people slightly spin up their CV. I am pleased to say, I said this to Peter Cardwell earlier today, this is one crime I have never committed. I've never really felt the need to enhance my CV. It says something about people's character if they need to actually make stuff up. But you know what this is making me reflect on? You know, Labour were continually jumping on other parties in the run-up to the last election for shortcomings in vetting procedures. It strikes me that the Labour Party itself has failed to do due diligence at the highest level on the people it's promoted to ministerial positions. It turns out that they've promoted a number of people who have actually fabricated or seriously exaggerated their credentials for the job. And this is a party that has been so keen and eager to leap on any shortcoming in the vetting procedures of other parties. And look, here they are, guilty of the exact same thing, arguably worse, because we're talking people who have been promoted into the highest levels of government.
Yeah, exactly right. And we'll just leave this hanging there. There's nothing much more to say than Jonathan Reynolds is the latest liar, or the latest cabinet minister, cabinet secretary, to be exposed as a two-bit little liar. You know, this is shocking and this is wrong. You know, the calibre of this cabinet is so disastrously bad, you know. But here's one thing that struck me, though. So he said, the reason that he gave up, allegedly, training to be a solicitor was he went into politics. He became an MP because he thought that was better for his work-life balance. Yeah, you shouldn't be in politics. That's what he said. You shouldn't be. It's not about work-life balance. If you're a cabinet minister, this is your work-life balance. You don't have work-life balance. You have work balance. You don't have a life. You get on with your work. You know?
That is unbelievable. And that, to me, that is a much worse crime than any exaggeration he may have put on his CV. You do not get a work-life balance if you're an MP. You are there to be on call all the time. And trust me, my partner is one, and there's no work-life balance. You know, you are on it the whole time. And yeah, maybe you get an hour or two here, but generally you are on call, you're on duty. And if you're passionate about your constituents and passionate about the work that you do in Parliament, and if you're passionate about the terrible, shocking state of our country, you don't actually want a load of time off because you are so concerned that you're putting every bit of your fibre, pretty much every waking hour of the day, into trying to make things better for people. So I have zero respect for people that say they've become an MP to have a better work-life balance.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Pick the guy out at the next election.
I mean, in my long and checkered career, I've never once thought about work-life balance, and haven't really had much of a work-life balance. I've mostly worked or been down the pub. You know, that's basically it.
You become unbalanced,
well, definitely unbalanced. But a cabinet minister who's thinking of his life in those terms, I would suggest profoundly misunderstands the role of a cabinet minister. You don't have a work-life balance, mate. You have a job and you've got to do it 24/7, right?
Absolutely, and just reiterate for our listeners, in what context did he say? He said he gave up he switched to politics for better work-life balance.
Yeah, he was apparently a trainee solicitor. He pretended he qualified, which he didn't. He was also a councillor, and he said he became an MP for a better work-life balance.
Yeah,
that is not a reason to become an MP. You know,
I asked you to repeat that because I still can't believe he said it. I still can't believe he said it.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Let me put this out to the audience. What do you think of the calibre of our business secretary, Jonathan Reynolds? 03444991000. We'll start this conversation now, Isabel, but we might go across the break on it. We need to talk about Britain's most senior judge, England and Wales's most senior judge, Susan Carr is her name, Lady Chief Justice Carr, who once a year gives a press conference. I can't imagine who bothers to go to it, but this year she said something interesting, indeed I would suggest controversial. She was reflecting on the fact that in a rare moment of agreement, Kemi Badenoch and the Prime Minister Keir Starmer agreed over the dispatch box in the House of Commons that a decision last week by a ludicrous moron of a judge called Hugo Norton-Taylor to basically let a family of Palestinians settle here in Britain using legislation specifically crafted for Ukrainians, thereby opening the door potentially to 2 million Palestinians who now, due to his ruling, all they have to say is, I want to settle in Britain, and we kind of have to let them do that. Now, Kemi and Keir both agreed that this was a wrong decision, and that was a loophole that had to be plugged very, very quickly, and that the judge had made a massive fundamental error, which of course he had. Susan Carr, the Lady Chief Justice Carr, at her press conference, told the media that it was unacceptable for politicians in Parliament to criticise judicial decisions. No, it's not. Nor is it unacceptable for people like you and me, Isabel, or any member of the public, if we feel like it, to look at a judge and just say, you are a moron and you just made a moronic decision. Lady Chief Justice Carr ought to get that through her thick head. And also, she demands that the taxpayer should start funding security for judges. No. You get a lot of money, honey. Pay for it yourself. Yeah?
Oh, dear. Maybe we should rename her Lady Car Crash. That's what
yeah.
I mean, who the hell does she think she is in saying that judges should be above any criticism? Not only are they not above the law, I'm sure she would never suggest that they're above the law, they are not above the judgment of their fellow men and women. And in this case, the judgment of a great many of the British people is that legal ruling was a disaster. It was not in the national interest. That is a judgment of our Prime Minister. It's a judgment of the official leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch. And it is the way that the vast majority of people, I would guess, if you poll them, I don't know, but I guess, that the majority of people in the UK would agree that that was a terrible decision, which has huge implications for our national security, for the number of people that may seek asylum here, and so on and so forth. So, hey, Lady Car Crash, we're going to go on telling you and it exactly as it is, which is that we think was an appalling decision by that guy. And you've got no place to say that we in the media and anyone else, frankly, can't say so. You're not above it.
Yes, and just to reiterate, Lady Carr, that you're not above criticism, Hugo Norton-Taylor, for that decision, allowing every Palestinian to settle in Britain if they want to, was a moron. And you suggesting that politicians, or indeed the people, are not allowed to criticise judges, that makes you a moron too. So how's that for criticism? Suck it up. Let's go to break, and when we come back, we'll maybe talk a little bit more about Lady Carr, because I do think we need to change our system in terms of judges. And we'll talk about migrants, a new system that they're using to game our pathetic asylum system to get asylum and live here in this country. So that next, stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. Before we get on to the latest ruse by the migrants to game our asylum system using the European Convention on Human Rights, let's quickly sort of conclude our conversation about judges, because I think we've got a massive problem. Susan Carr proving it. Now, that guy Hugo Norton-Taylor, I'm not saying that the sins of the father should be visited on the son, but, you know, it so happens that his father, Richard Norton-Taylor, 80-year-old Guardian writer, lifelong campaigner against Israel and for Palestine, only in the last couple of weeks, you know, tweeting and posting on social media all about the genocide by the Jews and so on and so forth. So you have to question what kind of household was Hugo Norton-Taylor brought up in, and I wonder why he reached that pro-Palestinian decision. So that's just one example of why we need to look at our judges. We need to judge our judges. We need to change our system, because I had a barrister on the show last week, Andrew Eborn, about this very case, and I said, well, can't we sort of reprimand Hugo Norton-Taylor? Or he said that there is no mechanism in this country by which judges can be sacked, punished, or even reprimanded. They are literally above reproach. And that has to change. And in fact, the people have to take control of the judges like they do in America. If necessary, we vote for them. They are worried about us because they don't care about us right now. We need something. We need to be able to judge the judges, because they're making, particularly these immigration judges, are making catastrophically idiotic decisions.
I actually agree with you. I think that we are at the point now where there have been a succession of judgments that are so obviously counter to the national interest that we need to have a debate about how our judges are appointed. And I really think it may be time, I'm afraid, to explore the possibility of elected judges as they have in America, because these judges are just getting far too above themselves. They will claim that all they do is apply the law, they don't have much flexibility. But if that were the case, they wouldn't be being asked to make a judgment. It's about how the law is interpreted. And in most of the cases that we've highlighted here on Talk, the judge at the highest level is involved because the individual, invariably a failed asylum seeker, has appealed and appealed and appealed again against deportation. And finally, some lofty person up there who thinks that they're above being criticised makes a judgment that is just so counter to any common sense and is clearly out of all tune with what people actually want from our judicial system, that it begs the question, what has got to change here? Either we've got to change the laws that they're applying, and in many cases that goes right back to the ECHR and the absolute imperative of leaving that dreadful structure, or we're going to have to change the judges. It's one or the other, isn't it? Because we can't go on like this.
Absolutely, yeah, we need to take a very good look at what these judges are doing, and that's part of the process of choosing them, perhaps democratically, but they should also be interviewed, I think. And I think that some body or other needs to discern, needs to establish that these people will act in terms of the law. And not be influenced by their own politics, because what's going on with these tribunal judges is they're all Guardian readers. They're all left-wingers. They are working against what they see as a repressive, racist state. And that kind of thing has to be stamped out. And that kind of brings us nicely... Oh, by the way, let's just remember the most egregious recent case, a migrant an illegal alien being allowed to stay because he's an Albanian. If he was sent back, he's spent 2 years in jail, came out, is a crook, about to be deported, allowed to stay by an idiotic judge because he said, if you deport me to Albania, my 10-year-old son doesn't like foreign chicken nuggets. Now, these are the kind of asinine, bovine decisions that are being made, which brings us nicely to our next story. Looks like our cross-channel illegal friends are onto a new ruse. What they're doing now, this refers to a particular family of Kurdish Turks. They're in Calais. Anyway, basically, they sent their 2 kids across the channel on their own, aged 6 and 9. 6 and 9. They sent their kids across on one of those small boats on their own. Of course, the kids make it to Dover or Folkestone or wherever it was, and now the parents are suing to be allowed into Britain under the terms of the European Convention on Human Rights, because they have a right to a family life and their family is in Britain. I would say, yes, you certainly do, and we'll just get your kids out of Britain and reunite them with you in Calais. How's that? There, your right to a family life. But this will work, won't it? This is the new way to game our pathetically lax asylum rules.
Well, I wouldn't be returning those children to those parents. Those parents should be imprisoned for neglect. I mean, what kind of parent who wants a family life dispatches their child to make a life-threatening journey, terrifying it must be for little ones, across the channel? A parent like that is not a fit parent. So their claim should be disqualified immediately on those grounds alone. And if they are to come to Britain, then they should be immediately imprisoned on our shores. But I'd rather they were imprisoned wherever it was they came from, because I don't think we should have to pay for them. Those poor little ones, well, what are we to do with them? I think we're going to have to, under the current system, we're going to have to look after them. And that is a very tragic situation. But they are not the children of responsible, loving parents, are they? By definition, no proper parent would behave in such a way. And what this just shows us is, I suppose it's another example of what we already know. These opportunists are finding ever more creative and reprehensible, frankly, ways to game the system, which is all set up in their favour. I mean, the other trick that is frequently used and is a huge drain on local authorities is asylum seekers claiming that they are children when they are quite obviously not children at all. And you know what they do? They will refuse to give the fingerprint or DNA evidence that is required to prove that they're clearly over 18. And that ties councils in knots for considerable periods and runs up huge legal bills. Again, if you're not prepared to provide whatever it is, the samples that prove that you're a child, then you should just be dispatched back from where you came anyway. But we shouldn't be in this situation. Nobody should be coming across the channel. And if we simply turned back the boat, either A or B said, yeah, sure, keep on coming. The minute you get to the UK, you will be imprisoned. Then that would pretty quickly stop it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there's two words. A whole policy could be revolving around this, and I suspect Reform will instigate a policy based on this. It's detain and deport. Simple as that, simple as that. But here, to go back to these judges, the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, and by extension decisions by the European Court of Human Rights, they're a big problem because the ECHR, Article 8, is the right to a family life. Now, the thing about going back to our discussion on judges is people say, oh, we've got to get, if we leave the ECHR, everything will be fine. It won't. Because even under the terms of the ECHR, these people do not have to be allowed to stay. They're allowed to stay because the judges choose to interpret the European Convention on Human Rights in the way that they do. In other words, in the left-wing way, let the migrants stay, 75% of them. So getting rid of the ECHR is one thing. That would help. But trust me, unless we get judges who are genuinely independently inclined, with independent minds, and are not prejudiced, not biased, they'll find a way of letting these migrants stay. So, yes, let's leave the ECHR, but as we just said, let's have a system whereby we can trust our judges, because at the moment we cannot trust them.
No, we absolutely can't trust them. And at the moment, no one's having this debate, really, are they? But I mean, it's not outlandish in America. There's nothing anti-democratic about it, quite the opposite. I actually remember going back to the days of absolute turmoil over Brexit, when MPs were doing everything in their power, Remainer MPs, which was unfortunately the majority of them, to thwart Brexit. Do you remember that a series of judges tried to side with the Remainer MPs? And a newspaper ran a front page picture.
Enemies of the people, was it enemies of the Mail?
The enemies of the people, which they were. But all hell broke loose. You know, you'd have thought that that newspaper had somehow threatened to kind of, you know, do physical harm to those judges instead of making a political comment, which they clearly were the enemies of the people, because they were making rulings which ran counter to the biggest democratic mandate for anything in British history.
Yeah. So I was amazed by the response to that Daily Mail front page, because I date back to the days where mocking judges was a national sport. You know, we always, at Fleet Street, we used to, you know, take the mickey out of a judge every single day. It was our fun pastime. And then suddenly, for some reason, we've come back to sort of revering them in a much too over-reverential way, and the reaction to that enemy is, you can't say that about judges. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, we just did. You know, we're going to
Exactly. So let me ask the audience: do you think we need a better system by which we choose our judges? Perhaps elect them somewhere or other. We need to have a say over these people, because they are making decisions that I think are harmful to this country. Don't forget, these tribunal judges are routinely allowing paedophiles who serve long jail sentences, come out of British jails, they're foreigners, due for deportation. They're routinely allowed to stay because they got their own kids. Right to a family life, Article 8. Now, if they're making those kind of decisions that endanger British children, the British people, then we're in trouble. We're in trouble. And therefore, I want to ask you what you think we should do about our judges. How can we get a better system to choose them, to put them in office, to make sure we can get back to what we should be able to do, and that's trust our judges, because right now I don't think we do, and that's terrible. Let me know what you think. 03444991000. When we come back, Isabel, we are going to talk about a really serious crisis. It is Britain's escalating welfare crisis. More than 3 million people claiming universal credit without any obligation to look for work. That's got to be wrong. That next. Stay tuned.
Well, it's very clear that Vladimir Putin started the war in Ukraine. And what needs to happen is Russia must not allow to win from the conflict that they started in the first place. But these talks are in early days, and what I'm interested to know is what actually comes out of them. My view is Putin is the aggressor in this conflict, and ultimately, if he succeeds in being rewarded for invading Ukraine, he won't stop in Ukraine.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Still with Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakshire. Isabel, quietly, we are now going to talk about, well, we're not going to talk quietly, but quietly, this is probably Britain's biggest crisis. And I don't say that lightly because we've got a lot of crises going on right now. This is the welfare crisis. Now, today it is revealed that more than 3.1 million people are claiming the full universal credit benefit without any obligation to look for work. So they've been excused looking for work. That's 3 million people. That is 2 million more. That's up from 1.5 million people claiming the same in January 2022. Add to that the overview, the shocking overview. This is absolutely extraordinary, that in this country, admittedly of more and more people, what are we now, about 70 million, there are 9 million 285,000 working age adults between the age of 16 and 64 who are economically inactive. In other words, they're not working, they're not looking for work, God knows what they're doing. Now, add that to the vast amount of money we're paying out to all these people claiming universal credit who don't even have to look for work. You've got a bill that is unsustainable. Liz Kendall is under massive pressure to cut our welfare bill, but with these statistics, she's just swimming against the tide. She's drowning. This is a really serious problem.
I mean, it's a gargantuan problem, and it is one that has got so much worse since Ian Duncan Smith from the Conservatives devoted literally years of his life to trying to make this problem better. I mean, that was the evolution of universal credit, was an attempt to try to make work pay. Well, it demonstrably failed. And, you know, he was very, very committed and passionate about this, which perhaps indicates just how difficult it is. Unless you're prepared to be even more radical, in fact, substantially more radical than he was ever prepared to contemplate. I think you've got to start again with many of the systems. And I've had long conversations about people who manage the assessments for certain parts of the disability benefit system, the so-called PIP payments, personal independence payments. And you know, privately, there are people who actually handle these assessments who are deeply, deeply concerned that they are letting through lots of people who do not deserve or need the payments. And that just, I've said this 100 times before on your show, Kev, that all that does is reduces the amount of resources available for people who really do need the payments. And ironically, it is often those most in need, the people with really terrible conditions, you know, who struggle to do the most basic daily things to look after themselves, who face the hardest time qualifying for the benefits. How can that be? And indeed, many of the very elderly and frail who are too shy to come forward, but not least because they have a lot of pride that younger generations don't seem to have. A lot of very elderly people don't want to take anything from the state, and they really could do with the help. And yet you've got young people who are claiming in much the same way as people used to say they've got a bad back. It's very difficult to prove. Horrible thing if you really do have it. They're saying they've got mental health problems. Well, yeah, some of them do, and a very small number of them maybe do need the support of the state. The vast majority would probably benefit from actually the structure of doing a day's work. And even Liz Kendall herself, you know, portrayed some of those people as victims of a system that doesn't make them go out to get a job.
Yeah, and she, poor Liz Kendall, is actually the kind of target for a panic-stricken government. I know that Starmer and the gang are right on her back saying, you've got to save us billions and billions of pounds. We are paying out too much in welfare. Well, we are, but we've allowed the system to run out of control. 9,285,000 inactive people. That's a hell of a lot. 3 million. By the way, this 3.1 million pounds people who've been getting full universal credit, even though they don't have any requirement to look for work. 1.5 million of them be getting that for the past 5 years. So it's an ongoing situation. Now, I think that this Labour government is going to really go against the grain for them, but they've got to get real about this. We as a nation have got to get real about this. Now, as you quite rightly say, the welfare system, the benefit system is one of the glories of this country. We look after the underprivileged, the disabled, those who can't work, those afflicted with physical or mental problems. You know, we look after people. But what's happened is, and we know it, and Labour are going to face up to it, among these millions that we're talking about, there are millions of shirkers, lazy, work-shy so-and-sos who are getting off work for the rest of their lives, sometimes on the basis of a phone call. People are being written off. You know, 22-year-olds are being written off by social service assessors or benefit assessors on the phone. on the phone, they go, oh, yes, I do rule that you don't have to look for work for the rest of your life. You will get benefits. They haven't even met them. This has got to stop.
They actually hate the fact they haven't met them. You know, as I said, I've talked to a very good source on this who spoke most powerfully about how frustrating it is to be one of these assessors and have to do it all over the phone. The vast majority of these claims are assessed over the phone. And, you know, the assessors could tell within a few seconds of meeting someone face to face whether they're a deserving case or not. But it's much more difficult over the phone. I would say there's something very, very straightforward that any government could do. And I hope that a future government that isn't a Labour government would do just this. And that is immediately disqualify any recent immigrants to this country from claiming benefits. That's not radical, folks. That's what the vast majority of countries in the world do. Other countries don't let you swan over and live somewhere new and say, actually, hey, I've just rocked up. You know, would you mind just paying for my life, please? Doesn't work like that in most other countries. And it is not a ludicrously crazy, extreme position to suggest that you need to pay something in before you take something out. In Singapore, they have a very smart system whereby everybody basically creates their own pot from which they can draw, a bit like a pension scheme, but you can draw from it at any point in your life. But it's finite. You know, you can't just immediately start drawing down from the state before you've actually contributed in any way. So I think we need to introduce a system whereby newcomers have to qualify. There may be a minimum period, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be. Then we would, in a heartbeat, given how many people in this country, in the UK, have only just arrived in the UK and are draining from the system, we would instantly absolutely slash the cost of the welfare state.
And it needs to be done. It needs to be done first. Just to reiterate, the 3.1 million Brits currently getting full universal credit without any requirement to work or look for work is up from 1.5 million in January 2022. So, you know, towards the end of the lockdown. So that is 3 years, less than 3 years, really. It has doubled. So it is.
You call them Brits, but I'm not sure they are Brits. They're people living in Britain who have just decided that this is going to be their home. And again, this goes to whether we're too quick to give people citizenship. So I think this whole thing is an absolute disaster.
It really is. It really is.
By the way, it's so abused, this system, that there are people who arrive in this country and within weeks of being here are literally sending benefits back to their home countries. Yeah. And if that doesn't tell you there is something completely rotten at the heart of the system, then I don't know what will.
Yeah, and as soon as you pitch up on the beach and we put you in a 4-star hotel and give you free food, free doctors, free dentists, free lawyers, we also give you 45 quid a week instantly. I mean, it's bizarre, it's crazy, it's mad. But trust me, Isabel, it spells massive trouble for this country and the government know it. Isabel, fantastic to talk to you. We will talk again tomorrow. Look forward to that. Isabel Oakeshott there, Talk's international editor. When we come back, we'll be talking about crazy Ed Miliband's net zero insanity. Stay tuned for that.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right, crazy Ed Miliband, the net zero secretary, is one of two things. He's either an idiot or a liar. He's probably both, to be honest with you. But do you remember his firm promise that his green dream would save us all £300 on our energy bills? What's been happening to our energy bills as he imposes his green dream on us? Oh, I know. They've been going up and up and up. And his officials are now conceding they'll continue to go up, but it's temporary. Yeah, right, yeah, sure. But here's something that will annoy you. Last week, it emerged that we have discovered as a nation, one of the world's biggest shale gas fields underneath Lincolnshire, a huge reservoir of shale gas, 110 billion pounds worth. Now, if we mined that up, if we fracked that up and used it, that will give us cheap energy for at least 10 years. Now, what has been Ed Miliband's response to that? It has been to reiterate that fracking will be banned is banned in this country and will be banned forever. Why? Because it will cause earthquakes. No, it won't. It will not cause earthquakes. So here we have a method by which your energy bills, my energy bills, all of our energy bills could plummet. We just have to start fracking out of Lincolnshire. And by the way, while we're at it, we could frack up in Lancashire as well. We have huge supplies of shale gas underneath Britain. When America started drilling for shale gas under Barack Obama, actually. So not some Republican drill person. They brought up 125 years worth of cheap energy. So much so that Americans pay virtually nothing for their energy, and America sells its fracked gas to us. So we can say, oh, we don't frack. Yeah, but we buy it. It's mad. It's mad. So this ideologue, this bog-eyed, mad ideologue, Ed Miliband, is taking us to hell in a handcart, and our bills are going up, and like a kind of closed book, he just will not concede that there is a way to save us money. He doesn't want to save us money. He wants to build windmills and put solar panels all over the country, even though they don't work when it's not sunny and it's not windy. We're always going to need coal. We're always going to need gas. But he won't accept that. To discuss this madness, man who's very interested in the environment, social and political commentator James Melville. Welcome, James.
Evening, Kevin. You well?
I'm all right, mate. Good to have you back on the show. Must get you on a bit more regularly. I apologise. We haven't been in touch for a while. But your input on this will be invaluable because you're something of an expert. Let's talk, first of all, about fracking. Now, it was, of course, Rishi Sunak's virtue-signalling government that not only agreed not to frack when there was that company up in Lancashire. They were about to drill for shale gas. A bunch of old ladies, with placards, put a stop to that. And I believe the Tory government actually agreed to pour concrete down the shaft just to make sure that we could never frack there. The insanity is off the scale. Now they've discovered one of the world's biggest reservoirs of shale gas under Lincolnshire, under the town of Gainsborough, actually, which could deliver to all the people in Britain cheap energy for a decade. It would bring our energy prices plummeting down. 110 billion pounds worth, 10 years worth, and Ed Miliband's bovine response to that is, we're not going to frack, we ban fracking and we'll continue to ban fracking. Oh, why is that, Ed? Well, it causes earthquakes. It doesn't cause earthquakes. Men don't cause earthquakes. So he's banning fracking on the basis of a piece of scientific nonsense and condemning us to expensive, ever-rising energy bills for the foreseeable future. Is there any common sense? Is there even a scintilla of common sense in this crazed ideologue Miliband at all?
No, I think what Miliband's doing and has done for 7 months is a monumental act of energy policy folly on a number of different levels. Britain, we're actually blessed with an enormous variety of natural resources. Miliband as well is kicking into the long grass, new routes of access for oil and gas in the North Sea. That's one component. Meanwhile, he's plastering solar panels on prime agricultural land, so it doesn't just, it's an energy security issue, but also a food security issue. You put them on brownfields or car parks or whatever. But it's an ideological zealotry to Ed Miliband that I'm concerned and many people are concerned about. He gives off the impression, like a lot of people in this Labour government, including our Prime Minister, that they just know best. But it's backed up by frame science, but without a real understanding of what energy policy should be in the round. We should take components of all aspects that minimize environmental damage, but ultimately are a cost-effective route to maximizing our energy security. And right now, Miliband is pointing it all in completely the wrong direction. Now, there's two things that really matter in terms of security in a country domestically to sustain a society, and that is energy security and also food security. And right now, for a number of different reasons that we could go on at length about, including agriculture, our government are not getting this right. And then that combines with things like energy prices, are one of the golden tickets for the Labour government in terms of their snake oil salesmanship before the election was about energy prices. And yet, what a surprise, the energy cap in terms of pricing is going up again for the third time under the Labour watch and power in April. And so we cannot believe anything that they say. They've broken pledges all over the place. But on a much more existential basis, what exactly is our joined-up energy strategy under this government? If it's just about, putting solar panels on and wind turbines and destroying prime agricultural land and also not gridding it properly and pouring out a funnel of taxpayers' money, largely to overseas corporations who are doing this, rather than joining up all our natural assets with an effective energy strategy, then we're going to be in a lot of trouble with this. And I think Ed Miliband over the next few years is going to be front and centre of a lot of accountability on this.
Exactly right. And the measures that he's taking are seriously detrimental to this nation. Cancelling all further exploration for oil and gas in the North Sea at the possible cost of 200,000 jobs. This shale gas reservoir that they've found underneath Lincolnshire, if they started to frack it up, that would create thousands of jobs. So apart from the fact we get cheap energy, thousands of people are employed. This is what makes a nation tick. This is what makes us get by. He's destroying that. And, on an even more kind of basic level, he's taking farmland and turning it into solar panel land. Therefore, our food production is in trouble. I mean, this man's ideologue tendencies, his ideologue obsessions are dangerous to Britain, and it really is getting very worrying. Nothing he says makes any sense at all. There is no scientific evidence whatsoever that fracking for shale gas causes earthquakes, particularly in a country like Britain that doesn't really have earthquakes. When they said, oh my God, if we drill for shale gas, if we frack here, it'll cause earthquakes on the prom in Blackpool. What a load of utter cobblers. And yet these are the non-facts on which Ed Miliband is making his deranged decisions. What are we going to do about this guy?
Well, it's all on the altar of net zero, isn't it? I mean, quite a few countries around the world are realizing, when they look at the cost-benefit analysis, return on investment on net zero, they're sort of actually walking away. I mean, obviously what's happening in America. But there's a gargantuan taxpayers' costs attached to all aspects of net zero, and also possibly supply issues, and also the conversation about farmland and food supply. And meanwhile, you have Ed Miliband, considering there's a £22 billion black hole, whatever that means.
Alleged black hole.
Alleged black hole, yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about black hole, talk about the 3 trillion national debt.
Yeah.
But again, that's a separate discussion. So 22 billion black hole under the auspices of what Labour are saying. Guess what Labour are doing, Labour government? They're spending 22 billion on carbon capture machines.
Yeah.
Now, personally, carbon capture machines, the best, most cost-effective route, there's plant lots of trees, plant lots of crops. But oh no, again, so what we've got is a Labour government wrapping stuff around net zero, but ultimately that net zero pipeline is to do with huge amounts of taxpayers' money going to net zero related corporations, huge amounts of subsidies, so increasing the black hole, and on crass logic solutions like carbon capture machines, ruling out other energy supplies, and you've touched on a couple, rather than doing, right, what is the best route in terms of joined up energy policy? How are we actually going to promote British companies in terms of getting any of these contracts? How is a return on investment for the taxpayer? How are we going to lower our energy bills? Put all that into the mix and ideally provide effective energy supply. Instead, we have this crank, Ed Miliband, who's wrapping it all, well, he is, wrapping it all around net zero because he just thinks he knows best. And he's following a particular type of science of confirmation bias to back that up. But ultimately, the overall cost effect in terms of taxpayers' money combined with high energy bills with no improvement to our energy security actually could be the diametric difference to that, putting a grave danger to our energy security, plus aspects of destroying farmland. It's a terrible, horrendous first 7 months of policies. And I suspect over the next 4 years of the Labour government, this particular issue is going to be one of the major issues because we're going to find out very, very soon that what Labour are doing on energy supply, energy policy, is barking completely up the wrong tree.
The average typical household's bill, energy bill, coming up is set to go up by about £100 a year. It already has gone up by a couple of hundred since Ed started imposing his madness on all of us. So the average energy bill is going to go up to £1,823 a year. Now, this is on the back of his firm electoral promise. Vote for me and my green dream will save you £300 a year on your energy bills and will keep coming down. Well, ever since he's been in, for reasons that are obvious to anyone with any common sense and a brain, the energy bills have been going up and up and up, and there's no sign of them ever coming down. And yet, underneath our feet, literally underneath our feet, there is the solution: frack for shale gas. As I say, when America did it, it wasn't some kind of sort of right-wing Republican drill baby drill type. It was Barack Obama who said drill baby drill for fracking, for shale gas, and they fracked up 125 years worth of cheap energy for Americans. Americans' energy bills are something like a fifth of ours. Think about that. And guess what? In order for Ed Miliband to say, polish his halo and say, we don't frack, we care about the planet, in order for him to say that, he has to buy fracked shale gas from America. Meanwhile, he buys windmills and solar panels manufactured in China that has something like 3,000 coal-fueled power stations. They make these alleged green pieces of equipment with old-fashioned fossil fuels. So it's just an exercise in self-deluding hypocrisy.
It is completely, this all environmental sustainability, but if you look at components, for instance, of wind turbines, the blades, they're made from balsa wood, which you have to plunder the Amazon. How is that environmentally sustainable? Or plastering solar panels on farmland, how is that environmentally sustainable? Or then you get into debate about the shelf life of wind turbines and solar panels, normally last between 20 and 25 years, and they end up in mass-scale landfills. The whole thing is just total crass logic, and we'll pay a price for this, not just in terms of our energy bills or the taxes that we're paying to, fund all these subsidies and this sort of crass logic, sort of pipe dream net zeros, but ultimately, it's not going to make any difference. Because, we've talked about this before, but Britain's contribution in terms of emissions is just below 1%.
Yeah.
And so I think what they're trying to do, Kevin, is trying to strut around the world the likes of Starmer and Reeves and Miliband saying, we're the great chieftains of net zero. And the rest of the world going, well, We just think that's a little bit passé now, or we've kind of moved away from that because we realise how much it's going to cost.
Well, they think, James, that we all care whether or not Britain is the world leader in net zero. As you say, it's totally tokenistic. We do a lot to keep our carbon emissions down, more than nearly every other nation on Earth. To wit, we now emit less than 1% of the world's carbon emissions. So therefore, we don't really pollute at all. So anything we do won't make a blind bit of difference. And yet, Ed says it's very important we must be a world leader. The idea is that Xi Jinping and Donald Trump and Putin and the leader of Modi in India and Brazil and Australia's quite a polluter as well, that they all wake up one morning, oh my God, have you seen what Britain's doing to save the planet? We better get on board. It's absolutely for the birds. They're laughing at us.
They are, yeah, and there's so many different issues, and it is about sort of, I think, strutting around and grandstanding on the global stage to show that we're sort of the leader in all this stuff, but ultimately they shouldn't care less about that. And that's one of the problems I've got with the Starmer administration. There seems to be too much of him grandstanding around the world saying he's sort of taking the lead on this. Actually, what people in this country want, more than anything else, is an end to the cost of living crisis, better infrastructures, reducing the tax burden, which is at its highest rate since 1948, having a joined up supply of food and also energy at low cost for consumers, and actually just generally fixing our public services. They want a government to do what this Labour government, when they were in opposition, said that they were going to do, to lower energy prices, lower council tax, lower tuition fees, do something for the farmers, support our pensioners on every single aspect. They've broken their promises. And this Labour government, this is why everyone's walked away from them already, even in 7 months, they're nothing more than a bunch of snake oil salesmen. And the public, understandably, during a continued cost of living crisis, see right through them.
See, I missed all that stuff. Let's get you back on next week. Good to talk to you again, James. Thanks very much, mate. James Melville there, social and political commentator. But he's right, isn't he? Honestly, we are in the grips of a madman. Ed Miliband is insane. He's insane. And he's costing us all a fortune. Think on that. Americans are on course to have energy bills that are a fifth of what ours are, because they are not stupid, because they frack for shale gas. Got 125 years worth. We got 10 years worth underneath Lincolnshire. 110 billion pounds worth. And what is our bovine net zero secretary's response to that? We don't frack. Never gonna frack. Why not? You idiot, why not? 03444991000. We're going to come back from break and discuss the Ukraine peace talks, but this is breaking news. Sir Keir Starmer, sir, why is he a sir? Sir Keir Starmer has called Volodymyr Zelensky on the phone to express support for him, and our Prime Minister has said that we support Volodymyr Zelensky as Ukraine's democratically elected leader. And that, of course, is a reference to the fact that Donald Trump has said Zelensky ought to submit himself to an election or two. So it's all going on the Ukraine front. We know we've had these Riyadh talks going on between Russia and America. Ukraine not invited. The EU leaders not invited. And looks like America's divorcing Europe. We're going to talk about that with Greg Swenson next, so stick around.
ridiculous for any democratic politicians or even citizens to discuss any words of Vladimir Putin about democracy and elections. Vladimir Zelensky is a legitimate president of Ukraine. Myself is a legitimate member of the parliament of Ukraine. We have 1 million people in the Ukrainian army. We have 7 million internal replaced persons. We have not less than 5 million adults in Europe. How you can conduct elections, meaning democratic elections?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Greg Swenson from the Republican Overseas Organisation here in London is in the studio. Welcome, Greg. Well, we've got lots to talk about. Obviously, these peace talks, the Ukrainian peace talks have been going on in Riyadh, in Saudi, between Russia and America. We heard at the beginning of the week that Zelensky would join them today, actually, but suddenly that was not a thing, with Zelensky moaning that he'd been excluded, etc., etc. Donald Trump, in one of his Mar-a-Lago press conferences now saying, well, what he said, I hear they're upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years and a long time before that. That could have been settled very easily. You should never have started. That's a bit controversial. Yeah. You should have made a deal. Have we got any... let's play some footage of Trump talking about this. Can we play that now?
And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way. And President Biden, in all fairness, he doesn't have a clue. What he was so bad.
We're hearing that Russia wants to force Ukraine to hold new elections in order to sign any kind of a peace deal. Is that something that the U.S. would ever support?
Well, we have a situation where we haven't had elections in Ukraine, where we have martial law, essentially martial law in Ukraine, where the leader in Ukraine, I mean, I hate to say it, but he's down at 4% approval rating, and where a country has been blown to smithereens. You got most of the cities are laying on their sides. The buildings are collapsed. It looks like a massive demolition site. So, you know, people are tired of it.
Now, Greg, we've got a lot to talk about here, and I want to at some point reference that fantastic speech that the Vice President J.D. Vance made in Munich last Friday, roasting all those cowering and useless, loser, squabbling EU leaders. Perfect. Bunch of tossers. Why not say the word?
Can you say that?
Can you say that? I just did, I guess. Anyway, we'll come on to that in a little while. And by the way, as long as Trump carries on like he does and like he is now, and the Republicans win the next election, J.D. Vance must be the next president, and what a great president it looks like he will be. Brilliant man, brilliant speech that. But first of all, let's talk about these peace talks. What exactly is going on here? Obviously, at one point we thought Zelensky would be there, and I do think that America and Russia would be very unwise to forge any kind of agreement without his agreement, because that would not look good, and if Ukraine doesn't stop fighting, you haven't got a peace, have you? But that notwithstanding, you've got these talks going on between Russia and America, and what I think is going on here is Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, the American administration, the new administration, is effectively divorcing Europe and just saying, look, you guys start looking after your own house. we are not going to back you anymore. And frankly, we don't want to send billions and billions of dollars and weapons to this country's faraway country anymore when we think a peace can be sorted out. And you can't come to the peace talks because you'll screw them right up. I mean, this is hardline stuff, isn't it?
No, absolutely. And it's not that America is abandoning Europe. Right? It's just that we are insisting that Europe actually gets their act together and starts spending money on defense and security, which is really important, obviously, but also, just kind of getting their act together in terms of how they're handling these crises, right? There is no central power in Europe right now. Germany has abandoned any concept of being the leader of the EU or of NATO. France is useless. Italy is doing their best, but they're spending, less than 2% on defense and security. So there's no collective argument in Europe about what to do. So why would you include Europe in these negotiations? Who do you include? Macron? Anybody in Germany? Like, it's just...
Well, one of the things to say about a lot of these European leaders is they're on their last legs politically.
Absolutely.
So Olaf Scholz, Macron, they're not going to be around for much longer.
I love the photo from like 6 or 9 months ago where they drew circles around every one of them. Giorgia Meloni is the only one who will last. Yeah. And Keir Starmer will last 4 years, but he's polling at, in the 20s, right? So... And the people in the UK are very against any sort of involvement in this conflict, and they are not supporting Keir Starmer. So, yeah, the political movement in Europe needs to be fixed, right? Whether it's done through someone actually taking a leadership role, which no one has done besides Giorgia Meloni, or you just have to understand that Europe doesn't deserve a seat at the table because they've done very little to support Ukraine.
Yeah, well, look what happened when Keir Starmer suggested he might put boots on the ground. Olaf Scholz stormed out, proving that these people are just squabbling, dysfunctional people who literally could not agree on what day of the week it is. If you put them in the negotiations, you'll never get anywhere. Yeah. Do you feel that Donald Trump and America are ploughing the right furrow here? Do you think they're doing the right thing by sort of overriding concerns and saying, let's talk to the Russians?
Yes, absolutely, for a few reasons. One is this is a proxy war between the U.S. and Russia, and that needs to end, right? Russia has 4,500 nuclear warheads. That nobody wants to get into another Cold War or especially a hot war. So
America's got China to worry about.
Exactly, and that's the second point, Kevin. I'm glad you brought it up because we have to think about Russia aligning with China. That's a bad outcome, right? You got 4,500 nuclear warheads, as I mentioned. China's got over 500 ships, I believe, naval ships. They got the hypersonic missiles. This is a bad formula. It's not polite. It's not, nobody wants to support Putin. It doesn't mean if you're advocating for peace that you're a Putin sympathizer, as a lot of the government censorship will say. But this is important to keep China and Russia segregated, and at the same time understand that nobody wants 20-year-old body bags coming home from Russia and Ukraine. Putin doesn't care about that. He's got plenty of bodies to burn. Which is horrible. Again, I'm not advocating for Putin, but we need to end this war.
I mean, Russia is a very strange entity. I mean, it is a huge country with a tiny economy. Yeah. Its economy is smaller than Italy's. It's smaller than Italy's. But it spends vast amount of its small economy on its military power.
That's right.
So it has this massive disproportionate military power, which is what makes it a superpower. In no other way is Russia a superpower.
No, they're except for, meaningless.
Yeah, except for if you get on the wrong side of us, we've got a lot of nuclear weapons. Yeah. That is the extent of their power. China has power on a whole slew of levels, and that is who America's worried about.
Yeah.
And so they want to get rid of this little pesky dispute over in the East and concentrate on the real enemy, which is China.
That's right. And so that's it's natural for America to focus on China, obviously. The Europeans have been asleep at the wheel for, for decades now. Yeah, after the Cold War ended, they just thought, oh, America will look after us. That's not going to work anymore. Yeah. And think about, America has $36 trillion in debt. So this whole idea that we can outspend the Russians, yes, we can, because, again, they're small ball. But the way Reagan won the Cold War and Mrs. Thatcher was to grow their own economies and then spend 6% of our GDP on military, so that even though Russia was spending a much greater percentage of GDP, their GDP was useless and lame. Yeah. That's how you win. But the Europeans, all they do is spend their money on their welfare states, and look what happens.
Yeah, indeed. Let's talk about Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer, I mean, he's playing politics. He's trying to sort of bestride the world stage. Doesn't really fit him, to be honest with you. He's trying to show to the British people, I'm a player here, I'm the bridge between America and Europe. Well, he's absolutely not. He seems to have missed the fact that when J.D. Vance launched that amazing speech, that amazing roasting of all the useless, weak, woke European leaders who are lost in their own left-wing nonsense, that he was pointing his finger directly at Keir Starmer. He does not see that Keir Starmer is in any way different to the rest of those EU losers, and he's right. I'm worried about the special relationship because Donald Trump is absolutely right. Everybody in Europe agrees with him when he says, you guys, NATO, you've got to start paying your way. He's demanding that every NATO nation, including Britain, of course, spends 5% of their GDP on defence. I mean, he can talk. He only spends 3.38%. Right. But, that's a lot more than we do. So Keir Starmer seems to think he's best mates with him. And this is his response. So Donald says effectively to Keir, you start spending 5%. Keir Starmer's effective response is, well, at the moment we're spending 2.3%, and I put in place a roadmap that might take us to 2.5%. In what way is that going to endear him to Trump?
Yeah, the roadmap concept is so absurd.
Why do you need a roadmap?
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah. And look, the UK is punching above their weight at 2.3. Yeah. It's better than the rest of the pathetic countries in Europe, except with the exception of Poland.
There's quite a few better than us.
No, Poland's at 4.
Denmark.
No, absolutely. But, with the exception, those are small economies. Let's face it. Yeah. Germany, France, Italy, Spain, useless. Yeah. Okay, so the French military's got a proud history. I really do think that. Germany, no. But the UK punches above their weight. It's
biggest military power in Europe.
It's important, right? But it's completely inadequate. And that's what we have to think about. And by the way, I'll remind the viewers that the U.S. has cut military spending for during the Biden admin. Like, they've cut 3% 3 years in a row. That's what we should worry about, too. Now, Trump will change that. Trump will clean it up. But we really need the Europeans to understand that, this whole 2% thing is not going to work.
And just lastly, it's being very demonized that the Russians right now, or the Americans are sitting across the table from the Russians. But Churchill said, George Orr is better than war. I mean, if we just never ever... I mean, I know everybody knows Putin's in the wrong. Trump is being classic Trump when he says to Zelensky, you started it. I don't think he did, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean,
they're pushing it a bit there. But if talking must be good, surely. I mean, aiming for peace is better than endlessly fighting that grotesque war in which hundreds of thousands of young men are dying in horrific circumstances day after day.
It's absolutely true. Like, we can't turn the clock back. It's not February of 2022 anymore. We have to understand that this is now, that was then, and it's important to stop the killing. And you might argue, and we all do, that, you know, Putin's the bad guy here. But again, he has 4,500 nuclear warheads. He is doing, he's the uncontrollable one in this thing. It is a proxy war between the U.S. and Russia. So the fact that we're leaving Zelensky out, who hasn't had an election in quite some time, and we're leaving the Europeans out, who are useless and haven't supported Ukraine, you know, I mean, let's face it, like, they're just not, right? So the Germans were nice. They sent some blankets or some MREs. But this has to be between the bad guy and the U.S., who are supporting the good guys, if you want to make that argument. But it's got to, it has to end.
Yeah,
this is crazy.
Very interesting times, and you know, the Europeans got our unequivocal support for Ukraine. Well, it hasn't been that unequivocal. I mean, we haven't sent any troops in, have we?
No.
Do you know what I mean? We just sent them money and weapons. So it's been very stylized from the start, and it still is stylized. So with reservations, you know, you've got to have reservations about this, but I think, as Churchill said, war is better than war. So if we could bring this, I mean, I don't think that Trump deserves criticism for trying to end this awful conflict.
Because everything else has failed for 3 years. And so Biden was asleep at the wheel, for sure. This whole incrementalist support of Ukraine. And now Trump is stuck with it, like a lot of things, like inflation, like the situation in the Middle East. Trump didn't create these things. He's just trying to fix it.
Yeah, indeed. Well, listen, I wanted to talk to you more about J.D. Vance's speech, but I think we know what that was all about. It was a remarkable moment when I think America... You know, America is still the world policeman, whatever you think, because it's the most powerful country on earth. And I think what J.D. Vance essentially announced is we are not going to be the policeman in terms of economic power. We're not going to push you around economically. We're not going to push you around militarily. But maybe, just maybe, we'll try and put you straight culturally.
Yeah.
And they're going to police us in terms of our wokery and our disgraceful assaults on freedom of speech. And whatever anyone says, well done, J.D. Vance. God bless America.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good to see you, Greg. As
Great
always, come in again soon. Greg Swenson there from the Republican Overseas Organisation. Let's go straight to break. Take a couple of calls after these messages. Stay exactly where you are.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I've got messages, I've got phone calls, and I think we'll read some messages later on. We'll go straight to the phones now, shall we? Because we're going to go back to the phones around about 9:20, so you'd have 40 minutes then. Got lots of calls, lots to talk about. I see Tarquin from London has been on, so I'll have a chat with Tark later, obviously. Love to talk to Tark. Now, first, though, let's go to Brighton for a new caller. I love new callers, as I always say. Isaac, welcome to the show, Isaac. What would you like to say?
I'm just starting to talk about Miliband and this net zero rubbish that's going on.
It is rubbish, isn't it?
It is. I was working in Glasgow for the BAE systems for a new shipyard.
Oh, yeah.
That they're building. And they've got a massive warehouse next door, and I was talking to one of the guys, and I was asking him what they're making there. They make solar panels.
I bet they do.
So I said to the government buying it, if the government don't buy off what's being made in Britain, they're buying them from China.
That's right. Yeah, they do that, and they make solar panels. They manufacture solar panels and windmills. All the windmills that we buy, they manufacture them using fossil fuel power stations, using coal. So all we're doing is a kind of exercise in virtue signalling hypocrisy. We go, oh look at these solar panels, look at these windmills. Aren't we green? Not really, if you look at the history of those machines.
I mean, if you bought them in Britain, so if you bought the solar panels from the BAE systems that have been made in Britain, then fair enough. But to buy them from China when they're clearly being made over here.
I know, it's insane. It's insane. And also, don't forget, he's just reiterated that we will never allow fracking. We've banned fracking, and we won't allow it, even though we buy loads of fracked gas from America. It's just hypocrisy, Isaac. It's just hypocrisy.
What gets me is the MPs are supposed to be well-educated people who with their finger on the pulse to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And the guy, he's like just oblivious to what's happening.
Yeah, and our bills are going up and up and up because of his net zero lunacy. His zealotry is off the scale. It really is crazy. Hey, Isaac, that's a great call. Call me again. Your first call, don't make it your last. Isaac in Brighton there. I'll just read a couple of messages before we go to another break. Here's one from Gaz. Miliband needs a kick in the nads. I don't even know what that means, but I'm kind of picturing it, and I sort of agree. Did he lie on his CV? Actually, Gaz says he loves the show. Thanks, Gaz. I think to be fair to Miliband, Ed, Crazy Ed, he's one of the few, or he's one of the cabinet ministers that doesn't lie. I mean, he tells his truth, he tells us the truth, and I don't think he's lied about his past, but that's not the problem with him. The problem with Ed Miliband is his present and what he's doing to this country. This is from Jenny in Poole. There's a reason fracking doesn't happen across Europe, and that is because we don't have vast open spaces as in the USA, Canada, Argentina, Chile and China. There were tremors last time we tried, but you're choosing to. You know what the tremor? That is absolute rubbish, Jenny. Absolute rubbish. All you need is a little mine. You don't need vast amounts of it. You don't lift the whole land up to get fracked gas. You just pull it up through a sort of mine, a shaft. So you don't need to sort of unearth vast areas. And secondly, it causes tremors. Do you know the size of the tremors that the initial fracking in Lancashire caused in Blackpool? It was the same kind of if you dropped a watermelon on a street and a house 10 doors down, that was the kind of tremor that fracking was caused. It does not cause tremors, and even if it does, tremors are not earthquakes. Tremors are tremors. They're nothing to worry about. So Jenny, you are falling, you're drinking the Kool-Aid there. You're falling for Ed's nonsensical rhetoric. Fracking is a great idea. It saved America in terms of energy prices. It could save Britain right now if only we would do it. But we have a mad ideologue who somehow thinks it's going to ruin the planet and cause Blackpool to be turn into the San Andreas Fault or something like that. Absolutely ridiculous. Listen, we're going to go to break now. More calls later, more messages as well, maybe a few WhatsApp voice notes. And after the break, we are going to talk about Keir Starmer. You know, he wants to manipulate democracy in this country, and they're rather keen, they always were, to lower the voting age to 16. So 16, 17-year-olds can now vote, or would be able to, under Keir's preferred system, because he thinks, because he's an old-fashioned 1970s style socialist, that all young people are left-wing. A new poll has revealed not really true. They're quite right-wing. So Keir's plans to destroy democracy, to stack the cards in his favour by giving young people the vote, might end up being very good news for Nigel Farage. Ha ha. That next. Stay tuned.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain?
Yeah.
Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. In a little while, we're going to talk about 16-year-olds, 16 and 17-year-olds who Keir Starmer wants to give the vote. Because he thinks that they'll all vote for Labour, they'll all vote left-wing. Well, a new poll has revealed that a third of 16 and 17-year-olds would actually probably vote Reform. So that ain't working out. So we'll talk to a 16-year-old in a little while and find out what he thinks. But first up, you fancy winning £25,000? Check this out.
It's competition time, and we're giving you a chance to win a whopping £25,000. So what do you need to do to get involved? all you have to do is text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post. It's as simple as that. Once again, to get involved, just text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post.
18 plus, UK excluding NI. Enter by SMS for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on March the 3rd, 2025. Or send your name, email and contact number to £25,000 cash competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on March the 6th, 2025. This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Right, there you go. 25 grand. Can't be bad, can it? Give it a go. Right. Now let's talk about young voters. As I say, it's well known that, Labour people always want to manipulate the electorate or manipulate democracy. You know, a lot of people say, they're going to give they want to make all these migrants citizens, so citizens can vote, they'll vote Labour. They might do that, I don't know. But they also assume that young people, 16 and 17-year-olds, would vote Labour if given the vote, if enfranchised. And so plans have been progressing along that route. However, a new poll reveals that a third of 16-year-olds would back Nigel Farage's Reform Party at the next election. So it doesn't look as if Keir's sort of rather old-fashioned view that all young people are left-wing is true. Let's talk to a young reformer, if I could put it this way, 16-year-old Talon. Welcome to the show, Talon.
Thank you for having me on, Kevin.
So you support reform. Why do you support reform?
Well, as a young person, I can see that my country is going in the wrong direction. And if my country is going in the wrong direction, my future is going in the wrong direction. We have an incompetent government who's sending this country downhill. You were just talking about net zero. We're paying billions. Our country's being deindustrialized, whilst China and India get to do whatever they want. We have inflation now going up. Today, we learned that inflation is now at a almost 1 year high. And this government is just running this country terribly, and I can see that our country is going in the wrong direction, and I want an alternative. I want change, and I think that reform have the right policies and the right people so that we can make Britain great once again.
Make Britain great again. That's got a ring to it. And your friends in your age group, do you have many friends who are similarly politically inclined, tend to support Farage and reform, a more right-wing outlook than Keir Starmer imagines?
Well, I know a lot of people in my age group, people younger than me, people older than me, but around my age, and they're also supporting reform. I find that most of my friends seem to be a bit indifferent to politics, but I have met a lot of people through my interest in politics who seem to share similar views to me, because we can realize that this country is going in the wrong direction, and we need some change.
So you're 16, so you a couple of years' time, you no doubt go to university. I'm guessing it'd probably be Oxford or Cambridge talking to you. But after that, I mean, do you fear that, Labour's Britain or Keir Starmer's Britain, I get the picture that it is not offering an ocean of opportunity to young people, that the future looks bleak for an entire generation. And would that concur with your outlook?
Well, that's how I see it. I mean, I would end up paying tax. I would grow up and be a taxpayer, and more than half of the money that I earn is going to get taxed away and sent to foreign countries. Billions of pounds going abroad. And I just think that under Labour, our country, our economy, and businesses, a lot of young people want to be successful. We have a lot of young entrepreneurs, and they aren't staying in Britain. They're going off to Dubai, Australia, and these other countries, because the opportunity is just so much better. Why should they stay here, pay all this tax for a country that is becoming less safe, a country that is just getting worse and worse, when they can just go to another country and pay very small amounts of tax? And I think a lot of young people are seeing that. A lot of young people are leaving Britain now. And if we want to keep these very talented people, these entrepreneurs, we're going to need a change of government. We're going to need a very different kind of mindset to what we have now. And a reform government, in my view, is they're offering the economic policies that I think that we do need in Britain.
And why, obviously you don't like Labour, you don't like left-leaning politics, or certainly not the left-leaning politics that are practised by Keir's dreadful crew, this gormless government. But what attracts you to reform as opposed to the Conservatives?
Well, when I first got interested into politics, the Conservatives were in government, and they didn't really appeal to me at all because they had failed. They're a failure.
That's one way of putting it, yes.
That's simple. Their tax levels in this country, under the Conservatives, the highest since the end of the war. Of course, we see Labour is not doing very well. But you have to remember, a lot of this stuff really started under the Conservatives. When we think about immigration, 1.2 million people coming per year, that is really something that Boris Johnson started. That's a Conservative policy.
You're right, exactly right, yeah.
Yeah, and the failure to tackle illegal migration, that was under the Conservatives as well. So I just think that they failed, and they're part of the problem, in my view, and that's why many people are turning to reform, including me, because we want a genuine change. Under the Conservatives, things were not too good either. That's my view, at least.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, this Labour government are pretty dreadful. But in fairness to them, I hate to be fair to them, but they did inherit an absolute shambles, an absolute mess. 14 years of Tory government, and this country, was just in the toilet. And so Keir Starmer, we needed a government to pull us out. But Keir Starmer and his gang were not the people to do this. Let me ask you this, Taylor. Do you discuss politics with your teachers? And what do they think of your outlook? Because I discern that a lot of teachers tend to be rather left in their outlooks.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've had teachers before who, they prefer to be more impartial. But
really?
Yeah.
You must introduce me to them, because I haven't come across many impartial teachers, but go on.
Well, I know that there is quite a problem in other schools with left-wing teachers, but I have seen some students who have been a bit to the left. We had some left-wing students who did presentations that I didn't really like, and this was a couple of years ago now, but my
sorry to interrupt. I've just got to quickly ask you, Taylor, because I've got to go, but what do you want to do when you leave university? Politics?
I might want to be a pilot. I'm quite interested in aviation.
A pilot. All right, well, go into politics. You're a fine young man. Great to talk to you. Thank you very much. Taylor there, 16-year-old reformer. Next up, we're going to talk about Kemi Badenoch. Is she on her last legs? That next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back in just a little while, 20 minutes or so. It's your calls. I'll read your messages and WhatsApp voice notes as well. So the show is yours in about 20 minutes for the last 40 minutes. And then Petri Helskin will be in to tell you what she's got lined up for your entertainment from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m. I've got a quick note here from Bob in Clacton, Farage country. Hi Kev, I think Ed Miliband needs a visit from the men in white coats. Couldn't agree with you more. The guy is absolutely deranged. Now let's go through a few more messages here. What have we got? This is it might be, this is from Sandy in Essex. It might be interesting to know how many British and non-British claim the unemployment benefit. I wonder. I mean, the point is, Isabel Oakeshott was making this point earlier, we do give a lot of benefits to migrants, to asylum seekers, to people who come here, foreigners if you like, but also we are not going to cure our benefit problems, our welfare crisis, just by cutting out foreigners. Millions and millions of Brits are claiming benefits, a lot of them mental health, a lot of them saying that they suffer from anxiety and stress. All this needs to be looked into a lot more closely. Now, before we get to you, this is a very important story, I think. Kemi Badenoch, I think it's fair to say, a lot of Tory MPs telling me this, that has been a disappointment as the leader, to say the least. They are voicing rising concerns over Kemi's underperforming antics at the dispatch box. I mean, she doesn't beat Keir Starmer. She actually manages to look bad against Keir Starmer across the Commons, and that is not good because he's terrible. Also, she doesn't like doing media, and you can tell. They're worried about that as well. And the net result of this is that Reform are going up and up and up. They are now regularly trouncing the Tories in the polls. I mean, not just trouncing, absolutely way ahead. The Tories aren't getting a look in. And the Tory MPs in particular, but the Tory faithful is trying to say, this woman, I'm not sure she's working out. Now, we're going to talk to someone now who I think is just the ideal guest because she knows about both sides of the fence. She has just... I don't like saying defected. It makes people sound like they're traitors. She has just switched from the Tory party to Reform UK. A very warm welcome to Dame Andrea Jenkins. Welcome, Andrea. Oh, hang on. We've got a sound issue, please. Can we hear her? Almost there. Yeah, there you are.
It's fine on my side, yes.
No, I've got you. So, your thoughts on this? It's not so long ago you were on the other side of the fence, you know, in Tory Towers, as it were. And, you know, I've been speaking to several Tory MPs. They are deeply, deeply concerned about Kemi's performance so far. I mean, you know, she's an intelligent woman. I think she's an impressive woman in many ways. I don't want to, you know, rain on her parade too much. That would be unfair. But, I mean, she manages to make Keir Starmer look good at the dispatch box, and that is no mean feat. What is going wrong here, in your view, Andrea?
I mean, I think that I've spoken to some Tory MPs. I've still got Tory MP friends, and there's a lot of buyer's remorse there. They feel, the ones I've spoken to, feel that they backed the wrong leader. And the thing is, I don't feel the Conservatives have learnt their lessons of the major defeat that they had, in which I lost my seat back in July time. They haven't learnt the lessons. There's still an arrogance there, and they're still not connecting to the public. This is why, you know, Nigel Farage is really connecting, is speaking from the heart, is speaking to what people really want. But what's quite interesting, Kevin, I was looking back at the polling with previous party leaders of the Conservative Party. Now, clearly it's not a 9-7 scenario, is it, with Labour coming into power? It might have seemed that way, but we know that voter turnout was low. So it's not really a Blair moment. And there's certainly buyer's remorse, and it's a disastrous Labour government, as we've seen. So I've looked at David Cameron's when he became leader. Now, he became leader in, I've got the notes here, December 2005. Now, by the April, the Conservatives was 19 points, Labour was 19 points behind from what they was previously, and Conservatives was ahead. And in those local elections, it was something like 35% that the Conservatives got in the local elections, 26 for Labour and 25 for the Lib Dems. So clearly, she hasn't made the mark like even David Cameron could do. And but this is one of the worst Labour governments in history, isn't it? So
that's the point, isn't it, Andrea?
There's so many open goals, which she's not using, is she?
You know, I've never particularly attracted me the world of politics to work in, but I wouldn't mind being the Tory leader right now, because you should be having a field day with this Labour government, and yet she doesn't. I remember about 3 weeks ago, I can't remember what stories were going on, but it was, the migrant crisis, all the usual crises. Loads of people talking about all the big headline stories, and she just cropped up at one point about 4 days into this raging debate on all sorts of issues, saying that she was a bit worried about the future of academy schools. Now, a perfectly valid concern, but hardly gauging the mood of the public, hardly gauging what stories people were interested in. And one of the things that Tory MPs are very worried about is she is well known to actively dislike engaging with the media. So her performances on the media tend to be, to say the least, mediocre. And she's notorious for, when she should be stepping up to the breach, sending in her various shadow ministers instead. So, you know this, Andrea. Today's world, if you can't perform with the media, if you do not understand the media and you can't work with the media and you don't understand which stories are engaging the public, you're in the wrong job if you're a party leader.
But I think I completely agree with you, Kevin, but I think it also demonstrates she hasn't got that political instinct.
Yes.
I mean, but the question she's picking, as you just said at the dispatch box, it should be pretty easy to nail Starmer at the moment. And it shows you, Nigel says this, but they're not the real opposition at the moment. I think it's because there's an arrogance there. They haven't learnt the lessons. She hasn't got that political instinct. And if you actually look at the benches behind her at PMQs, they look quite miserable, don't they?
They do. I think, when she attacks, it's difficult for her. I mean, even this speech she made this week, attacking wokery. Again, it's just like the migrant crisis. When she goes, this wokery's got to stop, we're going to get common sense, words, traditional values. And it's like, well, look, Kemi, your party started this. Wokery took its vice-like grip of this country and became the scourge that it is now, because Cameron, May, Johnson and Sunak were all asleep at the wheel. Johnson in particular just used to sort of shrug and think it was kind of funny. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't. What these wokies were doing were laying the groundwork for this Labour victory. And
absolutely.
When
she doesn't seem...
She needs to apologise for that, doesn't she?
Yeah, and also, I mean, look, as you know, Kevin, I was quite an outspoken person in Parliament, even with my own party at the time. And even when I was a minister, I was challenging civil servants on the sex education, the wokey stuff with children, what they're being taught. And I was challenging them. But the thing is, with Kemi, she stays silent on so many issues. I mean, how can people believe her? Look at the net zero stuff. I've spoke out in Parliament for quite a while on this, and very sceptical over it. And she's a voting record. She's just a steady Eddie who doesn't often put her head above the parapet until she's forced. And I think that people, I was warning people for probably a year before, when I knew that she wanted leader, that don't have Kemi, because the rhetoric doesn't match of what she's capable of doing. Look at her voting record, I said. And And we're seeing that now. I think they've completely picked the wrong leader. But, that's great for reform because, I've never felt happier, Kevin. I feel that I'm actually in the party that, I really believe in what they're doing, the policies, and to actually feel that you're still on the same wavelength is amazing, especially after the last few years, which has been a shambles, unfortunately.
I have Tim Montgomery on my show every Tuesday. He says exactly the same, that he feels like a weight has been lifted off his shoulders. I mean, for example, Andrea, how difficult would it be for her to say, if you vote for me, if you put the Tories back into power, the first thing we'll do is leave the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, because it is at the root of our problems with our migrant crisis. She doesn't want to leave the ECHR. She said it's very complex. Now, I understand that it's all enshrined in the Equalities Act. Well, unenshrine it. Get to grips with it. Promise the people we will leave the ECHR. It will not cure all of our problems, but it would be a start. By saying she wants to stay in it, she alienates millions of potential Tory voters, I would suggest.
Yes. And I completely agree. My battery's going on my phone because my laptop wouldn't work. But look, completely agree with you. And she doesn't believe in leaving the ECHR. Look, do you remember that what's been shown on social media so many times, Kevin, where she wanted student visas to bring more of their family over? So she clearly doesn't believe it. I mean, that would have been a no-brainer for the Conservative Party, but they're not brave enough to do that. I mean, I had a petition, coming up to 18 months, nearly 2 years ago now, calling to leave the ECHR. We got 50,000 signatures. Yeah. This is what people want, Kevin.
Yeah, exactly right. And your boss, or your new boss, as it were, Nigel Farage, I mean, he's got that natural gift. He can connect. He can connect to people.
And he's got the instinct now, hasn't he?
He's got the instinct as well.
What people want.
Yeah, and I'm afraid that Kemi doesn't have that, and that is a bit of a fatal flaw with a politician. So do you think that the Tories, as you say, they've got buyer's remorse? Do you think they'll take steps to rectify their mistake and replace her, possibly with Robert Jenrick?
I'd be very surprised, to be honest, Kevin, because remember, the 1922, they changed the rules now, so it's harder to get rid of a party leader. You've got to have more people voting for that. And also, they don't have enough people to fill all the positions. Some people are like doing 2 or 3 positions. So really, they're all bought in by having a position. So they're not going to oust her because they've got a position within the shadow cabinet, etc.
I've got to get this question in before you run out of power. I'll probably talk to you till you go. So the obvious question: can you foresee, as we approach the next election, a potential pact between Reform and the Tories?
I mean, look, before the election, look, I was trying to make that happen. But now I'm seeing the other side, so to speak, and how I've never known a party, except during the Brexit years, that 2019 election, to be able to pull from Labour and Conservatives. So I actually don't think that that's necessarily needed now. We're still 4 years away from an election, and we're building, we've got great structure within the party now. And I think the only way is up now, Kevin, and I think we'll continue to rise, God willing, continue to rise, and we'll overtake both of them, because we are gunning for Labour next. And as I'm finding in Lincolnshire even, that we're finding... Oh,
that's all right. Carry on. Sorry, you've just gone sideways. There you are. Is she still there? Yeah, I think that was it. That was the power running out. Well, it was good to talk. That's Dame Andrea Jenkins making some very good points. Kemi Badenoch, she's not working out. She's not working out. But Andrea pointing out there that because of the new Tory leadership structure, they're probably stuck with her, a bit like we're stuck with Keir Starmer's government. It's not like he's going to quit, is it, before the next 4 years? But we can only hope and pray. Maybe they'll replace him, but I don't suppose that will make it any better. I'll tell you what, why don't we, shall we play some of... Yeah, let's have a look at Badenoch talking about immigration, shall we? This is Kemi talking about immigration.
Immigration is far too high. We cannot support all those who wish to come to our country. We have no obligation to do so. The British people must come first. Our country is not racist. We don't need to apologize. We don't need to pay reparations or give away the Chagos silence. Free speech matters. Some cultures are better than others, and it's only contentious to say this because honesty has become impossible. People should not be afraid to speak out. We will be proud of our country. Most of all, we need to get up off our knees and start fighting, not just for the UK, but for the West and our values again.
I think there was that speech the other day at this ACR conference in London, the sort of right-thinking conflab. And, you know, the thing about Kemi, you know, I think mostly on most issues, our heart's kind of in the right place. But there are these technical problems, these issues, like why don't you want to leave the ECHR? If you don't leave the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, if you don't make Britain free, if you don't free Britain from its obligation to the European Court of Human Rights, you're never going to solve the migrant crisis. And that needs to be solved. There needs some firm statements on what the Tories would do. Nigel Farage would leave the ACHR, deport, detain, etc., etc. We know where they stand. We know where Labour stand. Let them all in. We won't do anything about it. Now, it's not a popular standpoint, but that's where they stand. I don't even really know where the Tories stand on this, and that is her problem. She's not getting her message across. They want her, by the way, they are urging her to hire some very experienced advisors to make her better equipped with information when she comes to Prime Minister's question time. So she's got it all at hand and she can perform better and give Keir Starmer the kicking, the metaphorical kicking, that he deserves. Because she's not doing it. He's beating her and he's useless. So worries all around Kemi Badenoch. What do you think? I mean, can she revive the Tories, or will she preside over what's looking like their slow demise? I've got a feeling that Reform UK might not even need them the way things are going. Your thoughts? Reform, Tories, can the Tories come back? Do you want them to come back? Or is it Reform for you all the way now? Or maybe it's even Labour. 03444991000. Your calls, your messages, your WhatsApp voice notes. When we come back, stay where you are.
Russian army can do nothing with Ukrainians, despite they're bigger than we, despite that they have more weapons, and so on, so on. They can do nothing. They have lost minimum 300,000 people being killed in Ukraine. Can you imagine? 300,000 killed, not less than 600,000 injured. That's absolutely dramatic losses for Russia, but they don't want to stop because they don't care about their losses. And yes, now they will put all their energy inside Ukraine, try to destroy Ukraine from inside.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Time for your calls, for your messages, for your WhatsApp voice notes. Let's get going. I'll read a few. This is from Steve. He says, according to a recent Home Office press release, 19,000 immigrants have been deported since Labour took power. By my reckoning, that's about 500 flights. Can you find out where these flights left from and where they went? Well, basically, Steve, don't think I can be bothered, but I can tell you about one flight. It was last week. It was to deport a load of Albanians. I say a load, it was actually about 47 of them. They were put onto a plane that with a capacity of about 250. Also on board were 150 security guards and a load of medical officers to look after their first aid needs. So this flight, we loaded them on, we flew them back to Albania. You can fly back to Albania for about 200 quid. In fact, if you shop around, you could probably do it for 50 quid. That flight, each one of those 47 Albanian deportees cost us, the British taxpayer, £22,000. And that flight alone cost us 1 million quid. So let's not get carried away with Labour's brilliant deportation drive. 19,000 immigrants have been deported. Great. There are 100,000 asylum seekers in this country right now, staying in hotels and at accommodation centres at our expense. Billions, 11 billion quid a year, something like that. £7 million a night. So let's not get carried away with their deportation. I mean, it's something, but frankly, they're only scratching the surface. Alison says, looks like backdoor 2030 universal income. That's about the universal credit system. Well, yeah, I mean, this is Hillary. She says, to Kev and the brilliant Isabel, not the brilliant Kev, the brilliant Isabel and Kev. She says about the judges, maybe they should have a yearly assessment. That's a good idea, Hillary, very good idea. A yearly assessment by randomly chosen members of the public on their performance, a parole board for judges. I'm not sure about the public, but why not? Representatives of the public, but some kind of parole board type setup. Yeah, I like that, that we assess these judges every year. We need to be able to reprimand judges. We need to be able to punish them. And if they are guilty of egregious mistakes, we need to be able to sack them. As things stand, we haven't got any comeback on our judiciary at all. We just have to accept their useless decisions and go, oh, we revere you because you're a learned judge. I've been reporting on court cases for more decades than I care to reveal. But a long, long time I've been to a lot of court cases, and judges are not necessarily the most impressive people you've ever come across, to say the least. A lot of them are just dozy. Now, here's another one. This is from Justin. Not only do we need to reconsider how judges are chosen and to whom they are accountable, but we need to reinstate limits to their power by restoring the supremacy and sovereignty of Parliament over the courts. You're right. Well, Parliament is supposed to, that's a good one from Justin there. Parliament is supposed to be sovereign over the courts. Parliament is supposed to be sovereign over everything, but it isn't now. I mean, laws are routinely, or legislation routinely passed to the courts to find out whether they're lawful. And they go on about Keir Starmer in particular. The role of law. The role of law is important, very crucial to this country. Well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with the rule of law unless you take it too far. But we don't have the rule of law. We have the rule of lawyers, and that is a very different thing. People like Susan Carr, the Lady Chief Justice, she thinks that they should be in charge. They should be making all the ultimate decisions. No. Our elected representatives should preside over judges, and we need a way of judging the judges, as I said earlier. Here's one from Russ in Newcastle. Can't the King sack judges if petitioned to do so by Parliament? It's never happened. The King can't do anything. The King doesn't have any power. Yeah, but people, I have messages from people saying, why doesn't the King get involved in these Ukraine peace talks? Because he doesn't have any power. He's just a sort of figurehead, you know. He's a great guy and all that, you know. We love our royal family, but they don't have any power, none whatsoever. And that's quite right, because they're not elected, and this is a democracy. Here's one from Mark in Norfolk. He says, crazy idea, but how about AI judges? Well, I mean, artificial intelligence would be much better than some of the complete lack of intelligence that a few of these tribunal judges have been showing lately. AI judge would be completely unbiased, would have complete access to all aspects of the law. Each side would present their case. The AI judge would evaluate the information, decide what is the truth based on the evidence presented, and then make an unbiased decision. Interesting, interesting. Although the trouble with AI is it's actually left-leaning. Artificial intelligence is left-wing because it's programmed by geeks, techno freaks who are left-leaning. So actually, the automatic impulse of AI, artificial intelligence, is left-wing. So there is a problem with that. I like the idea to an extent, but I think probably AI judges might be taking it a little bit far. This is from Nick. He says, reform will struggle to detain and deport along the lines you suggested, Kevin. It will just get caught up in endless legal wrangling. Well, that's probably true, but we need to extract the legal wrangling. That's the point. Stop all this. Stop all this legal red tape that basically allows paedophiles to stay here, even though they've broken our laws and should be deported. Stop all that. You know, do a Donald Trump. Stop the madness, eh? Let's play a couple of voice notes, then we'll go to break, and then we'll come back to your calls. So, first of all, here's Anna on the hate preacher Muhammad Hoblos.
Kev, I don't agree with banning this preacher. Let him come. I would love to hear what he says. By banning him, you give him power. Let him talk his absolute tripe. And it flushes it out. It lances the boil. It pushes it. You know, because all you're doing is putting a lid on it. We're grown up enough to deal with this, Kev. Most of us would probably laugh at him. I think a line of women standing laughing at him is far better than banning him.
I quite like that idea. And Anna, you make a good point. I mean, I've got to admit, personally, I'm conflicted about Hoblos because I'm a bit of an absolutist when it comes to free speech. You know, people should be allowed to say exactly what they want, even if it's hateful, in my view. But I believe that Hoblos's rhetoric amounts to a kind of incitement to violence, and certainly an incitement to vicious division. And therefore, I'm going along with the people who think he should be banned. And in any case, Anna, it's a bit of a fait accompli now, because although the government doesn't want to admit it, he has been banned. So there you are. But good point, Anna. Yeah, get a row of women to laugh at him. I'd love to see that. Let's quickly listen to Sandra. She wants to talk about Labour.
Hi, Kevin. I think it's very obvious to most people that Labour is terrified of losing the vote of many Muslim people because so many of their policies make it abundantly clear. Both Rayner and Streeting won their seats by a hair's breadth. And I distinctly remember a video of Angela Rayner pleading with a room full of Muslim men just before the election. It's just appalling.
It's a very good point, Sandra. You're exactly right. The Deputy Prime Minister, Andrea Rayner, she has a seat. I think it's Ashton-under-Lyme, I think it's called. If she loses the Muslim vote, she loses her seat. So as Sandra quite rightly says, you saw Ms Rayner sitting down in a room full of blokes to talk about sort of Muslim issues or the local issues. Not a single woman in there apart from her, Angela Rayner. So I don't think we want to encourage that sort of thing. But Labour, you know, they'll do anything not to offend the Muslims. They need the Muslim vote. And some of the MPs, like Streeting, in particular Angela Rayner, absolutely rely on it. They lose the Muslim vote, they lose their seats. So there's something fairly rancid going on there. Let's go to break. When we come back, your calls.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Quick message from Brian. So if these so-called parents are sending their kids over on the small boats, are they not guilty of endangering life at sea, which is a crime internationally? And are the French authorities not guilty of the same crime for letting them leave their shores? Great show. Thanks, Brian. Well, kind of, but it just doesn't go like that. I mean, what they're doing is unconscionable. Little kids, 6 and 9. Bye, kids. Yeah. Good luck getting across the channel. Hope you don't die. When you get there, we'll use you as a ploy to join you in Britain. Why not send the kids back? Then they have the right to a family life in Calais. How about that? Yeah, I mean, they are guilty of terrible crimes, endangering the life of a kid, but nothing will come of it. And as for the French, you know, they just let them boats leave, don't they? We gave them £500 million. They don't do anything about it. I heard some politician on Talk this morning go, we've got a closer relationship, closer negotiation, a relationship with our friends in Europe, more closely with France. How much longer are we going to say that for? We've given them way over £500 million to patrol their beaches, and they don't really. They do a bit, but it's only tokenistic. Those boats just leave with impunity because the French don't want them to stay in France. They want them to come to Britain. So, you know, don't expect the French to start enforcing the law when it comes to migrants. The only thing the French want to do in terms of the migrants is wave them goodbye. Have a nice voyage. Enjoy Dover. Anyway, let's go to the phones now. Let's talk to Lawrence in Colchester. Wants to talk about Kemi Badenoch. Hi, Lawrence.
Hello, mate. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Nice to talk to you again, Kevin.
Pleasure.
Show, Boozle.
Thank you.
You and your colleagues I hope you stand for Parliament in the next 4 years, mate. I really do. Or for the Mayor of London, for Christ's sake. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think I could do a better job than Sadiq Khan, but then again, so could my dog.
Exactly.
What do you want to say about Kemi Badenoch, Lawrence?
Kevin, I'm 67 in June. I voted for Margaret Thatcher, working class carpenter, all right?
Mm-hmm.
I never looked back up when she was in power. I've done well for myself.
Mm-hmm.
The Tories called this election early because they knew what a mess they put the country in. OK, there was COVID, but when we voted to come out of Europe, they were all running about like headless chickens, and then COVID came along.
Yeah, well, by the way, Lawrence, just to interrupt you for a second, let's not give the Tories a pass because of COVID. The COVID was a crisis, not necessarily because of the virus, but because of the policies that the Tories inflicted on us.
Exactly. And from Cameron all the way through, except for Liz Truss, she was on Alex's show today.
Yeah, no, I saw her, yeah.
Yeah, she was talking a lot of sense. People want to listen to that lady. She would have been a good Prime Minister if she was given the chance, but it was all against us.
You're right.
Stabbed in the back, she was. But this new girl that they've got, Kemi, right?
Yeah.
It's all smoke and mirrors with her, mate. You know? They don't want, you said it all on your show, they do not want to leave the ECHR. So all we're going to do is go round and round in circles. But keep saying all the rubbish that you're coming out with, which is true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because she's a black lady, and before people start shouting, I've got mixed-race kids, so they can all shut up. But because she's a black lady and she keeps splitting on about all the immigrants, which is all true, the Tories have only put her there, in my opinion. She's intelligent, I'm not saying she isn't, but they've only put her there because she's a black woman, okay, and she can get away with more rhetoric.
I'm not entirely sure about that, Lawrence. I mean, I know where you're coming from.
Time will show, Kevin. Time will show.
Well, I'm not sure that they voted her just because she's a black woman. I mean, I thought that was an interestingly innovative thing for them to do. And at the time, I thought, well, this is going to be great because I do think Kemi's heart's in the right place. Her heart's in the right place. But I think, to use your phrase, she's a bit useless. Yes, that's the problem.
Absolutely useless. But that doesn't bother me because I'm a staunch Reform supporter now.
Yeah.
I belong to them. They're going to be in power. People have had enough of it.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, I was brought up 58, born in Paddington Green. I've got loads of Jamaican mates. Okay, I still keep in contact with some of them that are alive, and they say exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
People are sick and tired.
This is not a race issue. This is an issue for Britain, Britain isn't a racist place. We have quite a lot of racial harmony here, and people all across the scale, regardless of colour, creed, or class, are extremely worried about this government, and they are disappointed in Kemi Badenoch's Tories.
Exactly. Great show, Kevin.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Lawrence, good to talk to you, mate. Call me again. Lawrence in Colchester there. Let's go to Francis in Wiltshire. Wants to talk about net zero. Hi, Francis.
Hi, Kev. I could do a quick diversion on to the legal status of the ECHR HR Act 1998, the Supreme Court, all traps laid by Blair.
Yeah. Well, he enshrined it in the Equalities Act, and that's why...
No, not in the Equalities Act, in the HR Act, 1998.
What's the HR Act? What does that stand for?
Human Rights Act, 1998.
Yeah, well, it's equalities legislation, 1998, yes.
It's not equalities at all. You've got that wrong. Sorry. Anyway, what I wanted to talk to you about...
What you wanted to do is instruct me about everything else that I've got wrong. What else have I got wrong?
No, I'm not. You're wicked. You really are at times.
Go on, anyway.
Now, I shall start by saying I'm not an economist.
Yeah. I know someone else who isn't as well.
But I do understand economy. or economics, unlike our wonderful Chancellor.
Yeah.
Now, when we come to net zero, it's a complete, it's a complete set of lies, basically.
Set of lies, and it's economically catastrophic.
No, it's more than that. It's complete lies. CO2 is the gas of life. It's not even.
Yeah, but I mean, we know all about that. We know all about that, Francis. The point is, no, Francis, this is not a school lesson, right? We know all about carbon. We know all about that stuff. What we're talking about is that Ed Miliband, Crazy Ed's net zero madness, is economically catastrophic.
Well, but it's not even necessary.
Yeah, well, exactly. But I know, but I don't want to talk about the science. I want to talk about the economics. It's not necessary, and it's destroying this country.
Let me move on to the environment, please. I know you take an interest in that.
Hang on, I'll get a notebook so I can take notes.
If you look at solar panel and wind turbine generation, it is incredibly toxic. Probably only China could actually refine the rare earth minerals. They dig tons of copper out of all parts of the world, and they actually dump a whole lot of environmental mess.
You mean the windmills and the solar panels are not environmentally friendly in terms of their manufacture and what they're made of and what power is used to create them? Is that what you're talking about?
No, they're totally toxic. Then we come to the operation of them.
Yep.
So we see in the operation birds being killed.
Yeah, bird blenders, absolutely.
In the marine life being killed, like whales.
Yeah.
We're seeing insects killed.
Yeah, I know,
Again, in operation, they're pretty nasty. Then you come...
Yeah, but the problem with everything you're saying, Francis, is you're trying to talk common sense. You're pointing out all the horrors, all the lunacies entailed in Ed Miliband's net zero policies. And you're exactly right on every single count. But none of it matters because Ed Miliband is not interested in common sense, logic or facts. You get that. He's an ideologue who is taking us from hell to hell in a handcart on the back of his ideology, which isn't very scientific, to say the least, you see?
Well, he has no science, nor does the Climate Change Committee. None of them are scientists.
Well, they're politicians, aren't they? Yeah.
Well, they're a quango. Get rid of them.
Well, yeah, it's a thought. Well, listen, Francis, do phone in every night because I need to be educated, and it was interesting to talk to you. No, good to talk to you, mate, seriously, and phone in any time. Francis there with tonight's lecture. Right, let's go to break, and when we come back, I think it's Tarquin time. That next. Stay around.
And what happened in the case of the market crisis of 2022, the Bank of England have since admitted it was their fault. They've admitted that 2/3 of all of that market movement was down to their failure to regulate pensions. But they were successfully blamed it on me. And as you know, Alex, we've got a very supine mainstream media in this country. They spend a lot of their time being briefed and leaked to by the permanent bureaucracy. They spend a lot of their... The Bank of England have since admitted it was their fault.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Don't forget, I'll be back tomorrow night with another edition of The Political Asylum. That starts at 7 o'clock, as it always does every weekday night, and it will run till 10 p.m. also, as it always does every weekday night. Always enjoy your company. So much to talk about. It's been such a busy time lately, hasn't it? So join me again tomorrow night, if you will, and fairly soon you can join Petri Hoskin. I'll go back to the phones in a second. Some more WhatsApp voice notes. Here's Jerry on our benefits welfare crisis.
People claiming mental health issues and they're out to work again. It sickens me because I pay somewhere in the region between about £18,000 and £24,000 a year in tax and national insurance to keep these people. Up until I was 34, I always worked 2 jobs. Even with mental health issues, absolute disgrace. Get them back to work. In fact, do you know what to do? You should have these folk out scrubbing graffiti off walls just for their benefits. Put them to a 40-hour week, and I can guarantee you, the ones that are at it would actually go and find a proper job. It's a disgrace, utter disgrace.
Great WhatsApp voice note, that, Jerry. I mean, let's spare a thought for all the people who genuinely deserve welfare and benefits, and the disabled, the mentally afflicted, those suffering from mental health issues, etc., etc. But you're right, Jerry. Vast swathes of these people who are being signed off for life, never having to work. These people now, currently 3.1 million, getting full universal credit with no requirement to even look for work. Vast swathes of them are just lazy, work shy. You're right, Jerry, absolutely. Here's Judy again on benefits.
The problem with welfare benefits is a few have poisoned the well for the many. I think what they should do is look at all these people of working age, and those that haven't worked the longest, start with them or have a rigorous assessment. And if you think they're swinging the lead, make them get a job. Mental health issues, explain to them that they'll be better off working rather than sat at home with the mental health issues. Yes, that's right.
Sort of making my point there, Judy, that all these, the shirkers, the people who are swinging the lead, are spoiling the benefit system for people who genuinely deserve it. Absolutely. Very good point, Judy. And finally, Tom on Reform UK.
Hi, Kev. The Conservative Party are a bunch of plums now anyway. I think Kemi Badenoch, if she is kicked out now, I think then you will see a Reform government next time round, because obviously Labour are going to be a one-term parliament, but there's still infighting in the Conservative Party. So I think it's Farage's for the taking.
I've got a lot of sympathy with what you're saying, Tom. People saying, Reform can't do it unless they do a deal with the Tories. I've got a feeling that with the momentum they've got at the moment, they could do it without the Tories, that more and more people are defecting from the Tories. They feel betrayed by the Tories. 14 years of this unbridled immigration. They didn't even tell us about it. Allowing this wokery to grip the country. People feel betrayed by the Conservative Party, and they're not in the mood to forgive them. And more of them are switching from the Tories to Reform, and that could give Reform a majority all on their own. Interesting times. Let's go back to the phone. It's Tarquin time. Hi, Tark.
Kevin, another brilliant show. Your guests today, you're just getting better. Andrea Jenkins, that's a real
She was great,
coup.
wasn't she? Shame her phone ran out of power, but we've got a good 20 minutes or so. So, yeah, she was great, wasn't she?
Have you noticed how all of the ladies on our side of the debate, gorgeous, Isabel, gorgeous, Alex, gorgeous, Andrea, gorgeous, they're all beautiful women.
Yeah, well, that's the only reason I have them on, because of their looks. I'm only joking. Oh, no. You're not even allowed to make a joke like that now. No, you're absolutely right. They are brilliant women, and it's great to have them on.
Intelligent too. But what's really annoyed me tonight, Kevin, is this revelation about this Jonathan Reynolds character.
Liar Reynolds.
Yes. Well, I've just done a bit of background research before I came on, just to check my facts, or as you have to do these days, look at BBC Verify with a known...
Don't check the facts with them.
Yeah.
Talking of liars, they get everything wrong.
Yeah, taking their lessons from Rachel from Account's Hair by Lego.
Yeah.
What I was going to say was this. Simple. There's a very well-known lawyer. I won't name him, but anyone can find him. He's on YouTube, and he has a black belt, and he's a barrister, and he's a practicing barrister.
Okay.
He's just done some research to find out that, according to the Legal Services Act of Parliament, to fabricate oneself as a solicitor and not be listed on the SRA, the Solicitors Registration List, is a criminal offence. Now, where is this full force of the law? I don't hear that coming from Keir, do you?
The rule of law. The thing is about Reynolds, right? What you're talking about. If Reynolds ever did or now tried to pretend to a potential client that he was a solicitor, that's a very serious breach of the law. But just pretending you were a solicitor, which is what he's done, I'm not sure that's against the law. But frankly, Tarquin, I am getting sick of all these liars in Keir Starmer's cabinet. Don't forget we had Louise Haigh, the Transport Secretary, who was pretty economical with the truth about her past as a convicted fraudster.
Exactly.
Rachel from Accounts, just a serial liar. I mean, barely seems to have told the truth ever about her career. And now Reynolds. These are cabinet secretaries. These are people who have the most important jobs in the land. It's outrageous.
It's bringing Parliament into disrepute. I think we should dissolve Parliament, call an election, clear the decks, and get a reform government in. We could do it, Kevin.
Yeah, well, you know that's an impossible dream, but I like the idea. If only, Tarquin. Good to talk to you as always, mate. Gotta go, but great to talk to Tarquin every night, really. I like talking. He usually compliments me. That's why I let him on. You want to get on? Just pay me a compliment, and I'll definitely get you on the show. I wonder if Georgina will pay me a compliment. Doubt it, but it's Georgina from London. Hi, Georgina.
Good evening, Kevin. Fabulous show as
There you go. There you go. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. I've got to get this off my chest.
Yes, please do.
Otherwise, I am not going to sleep tonight. So please bear with me just for a moment.
Go for it. We've got time.
I'm sick of to the back teeth with all the whining from the EU and media about Trump's handling of the Russian-Ukraine peace talks. Yeah. They've done nothing about this situation for the past 3 years, and it's taken Trump to come along and take the reins within the first months of his office. Honestly, they wouldn't give this guy credit if he found a cure for cancer.
I think I like the point you're making. I mean, I've got reservations about what Trump is doing, but only reservations. I think, you know, by taking the initiative and saying, look, if we don't talk, this awful conflict, hundreds of thousands of young men just dying on those, you know, grotesque blood-soaked fields in the middle of nowhere, day in, day out, this murderous death everywhere. You know, if we don't talk, this will go on forever. So, it's all very well to keep saying, oh, well, Russia are the bad guys and we shouldn't talk to them and all that. Well, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think I'm with you, Georgina. I agree.
Well, Trump's doing a wonderful job with Putin so far with negotiations. He's getting something in his political basket to take to Zelensky and the EU's table so as they can start to negotiate. Zelensky has been the figurehead of the Ukraine throughout this war. So I think it's only fair that he sees it through to its conclusion. My advice to the EU is let Trump do his job. He's not doing a bad job up to now. And if he does sort this out, which I know he will, I hope he's given the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, he could do because arguably also, Georgina, he's playing a big role in potential peace in Gaza as well. So if he gets peace in Gaza and peace in Ukraine, you're right, he's a shoo-in for the Nobel Peace Prize. My God, the lefties would hate that, wouldn't they?
Oh, that would put the cat amongst the pigeons.
Wouldn't it just? Wouldn't it just? Wouldn't it just? Georgina, great to talk to you. Thank you very much for an excellent call. It's Georgina in London. And lastly, I think Petri will be in a minute. Let's talk to Christine in Inverness, who also wants to talk about these peace talks. Hi, Christine.
Good evening, Kevin. Many thanks for calling. My point is that I feel that Biden kicked the whole thing off when he withdrew troops from Afghanistan, roughly a year before Putin started putting his troops down the eastern border.
Do you mean that Joe Biden sort of put on an international display of incredible weakness on the part of America?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think you're right.
It was interpreted. Now, the thing that I can't understand is why did a year have to elapse before any of the Western nations actually did anything? You know, they sat there watching the Russian troops amass on the eastern border of Ukraine and did nothing.
Yeah, you see, what is interesting, Christine, is that, you know, all these European leaders there, and America to an extent, they love to say, oh, we've been unequivocally supportive of Ukraine. Our support for Ukraine has been unbridled, unending, magnificent. Well, we didn't actually go in to help them, though, did we?
No, absolutely. You know, they spent a year watching this gather. I wonder what they thought Putin was going to do at the end of the day, just withdraw them all. I actually think the West has a lot to answer for, and I can't quite get a hold of what was going on in their minds, because it just does not add up. Unless, of course, it's the warmongering, you know.
No, exactly. Christine, really interesting call. Thank you very much for making it, and please call me again. Christine in Inverness there. That's about it for me tonight. Now, you've got Petri Hoskin. Hi, Petri.
Hello there. What a day it's been, crikey. Right, coming up, we're going to be talking about the knife crime new measures, which to me look like puff and mirrors. I mean, if people want to stab somebody, they're going to do it with a broken bottle, right? It's
Can
just
we stop this
rubbish.
narrative?
Yeah.
Can we stop this narrative blaming Amazon for kids getting hold of knives?
I know.
I mean, it's an obvious point.